Good morning. Hello. Hi. My name is Natasha. I am the creator and the founder of the Glow Up Method, and I'm so excited to be here with you today. Oh my goodness. What a great day. Last night was a little touch and go. There was some crazy incidences, but I feel like regardless, it really was the theme yesterday was to like silence and to tune out of all the external distractions and really practice tuning in. It was super hot. And as I was like anticipating, I did all my, exterior things like my watering, my maintenance of my flowers and my succulents and my fountain and all these things. And I got all my stuff done so that I could really dive into some stuff, without having that like lingering thing, because I do my steps, but it's because I don't have it on my calendar to say, here's exactly when I'm getting this many and here's exactly when I'm getting this many. There's always this like wonderment of like when, how, da 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 da. But I ended up like getting everything done. I watched the USA versus the my gosh, my brain is anyways, we lost the Copa game, so we are out. I ended up like, I never spend time downstairs because it's typically where Chris is. And so like, I mean, I'm in the kitchen and stuff like that, but as far as the living room goes, but when it gets hot in here, I like to spend time downstairs. And overall I do. I don't like to just be confined to my home, office, bedroom, workout space, like it's a small space and I've maximized the area. But, like I like variety, like it makes, for new ideas, new things. So I did some of my I went for a walk yesterday, but I also did some of my steps inside and I really liked that. I was downstairs doing it. It just was this like full circle moment and it really brought me back to where it all began, because it was in that living room that I got a little more serious. That's when I was like, okay, I'll do a 15-minute YouTube, and I couldn't even manage through the 15-minute YouTube. But there's something nostalgic that like came up and I didn't even realize it. But I mean, even before then, I had, different experiences with, trying to improve my health, and I would do like walking. I remember like binge watching Game of Thrones. I binged watched this show called Atypical and just walking back and forth in my living room. And then that ended up stopping for a while because I ended up taking care of my aunt and I was able to maintain my walking through that. However, once she passed away, like everything kind of hit, like when I was in the motion of doing it, it was okay. But it was like when I stopped and like the depression hit in and the grieving hit in, it was like everything really became even more challenging to navigate through, because it had been like one thing on another, on another, on another, and another. And I wasn't in this habit or acknowledgement of this like processing factor of things. It was just like, previously things would happen, I didn't like it, or, made me feel like crap or whatever it made me feel, but we just pushed that on down. We're not going to think about that. But having this experience of, supporting somebody through hospice, like I had this delusion, right? Like the first time my uncle went on hospice, I was like, you're giving up. Like I had this, predisposed opinion of what hospice was. And to me, hospice was giving up. It was, I'm going home to die. And on the contrary, like I say, like my uncle is one of those outliers that not only went home on hospice, and many times went home on hospice, but went home on hospice, was on hospice for 1 year and basically aged out of the program. Like they were like, this program is not made for, somebody in perpetuity. It is, it has a very clear mission. And at a year, post, you are doing great and you're, out of the program. We're available if you need us in the future. Which is great. And they were like, this is so rare, celebrate it and be like joyful and happy for it. And we were like, and he was like, see, this is exactly what I meant. I did not go home to die. I went home to live. And having that shift in my mental energy when it came to that word hospice was huge, because up until that point, everybody that I had ever known that went on hospice literally immediately died after, like sometimes within hours, sometimes within days, but nothing longer than that. And so having to see his philosophies about life and living, I'm going to put on the light now. Hi there. But getting to see his philosophies on life and living really opened my mind to possibilities, and really signified to me that I have so many predisposed biases built into me, and I don't know where they came from. I don't know, because like the first time I ever heard of the word hospice, was with my grandpa, the one whose birthday was yesterday, ironically. And I just, I was like a 19-year-old kid. I had no reason to know what, thankfully up until that point. I'm not saying people younger don't, but I just, at that point, nobody I knew, nobody talked about. It was, not something I learned about in a classroom. It was just this foreign thing. And, it was clear to me that he was deteriorating as far as his health goes, as far as his cognition was going. And, I had this hope that hospice would help and save him. And it was on the contrary. It was like, oh, he went on hospice and now he died. And I know that that wasn't true now. And the same goes with my grandma. So my grandma, who just recently passed, had the anniversary of her passing, just a few days ago for that as well. But, and her funeral, let me tell you, like my oldest son fainted. He literally had a candle. He burnt me down my back. My other son fainted, but I didn't really, or had a seizure. We don't even know which one it was, but I was so focused on Brad. My daughter's like, something's wrong with Dylan. And I just was like, this is too much. Like it ended up in an ambulance. I missed most of my grandma, who was like my ride or die. She was my bestie. And I missed most of her funeral. And a part of me is like, she probably doesn't want me standing here crying. Like, she always said she was going to go out with a bang. And let me tell you, she set off bombs in there, and my kids were dropping like wildflies. So, we ended up leaving. It was just quite the show. My uncle came in like and the Orthodox churches are very like formal, but he came in like a Hawaiian shirt, and he came in late, and he's like, "Hi, Mom." I'm like, "Oh my gosh," but in hindsight, you know what? I would rather my kids just come in, and I don't even want a big funeral or anything like that. But like in hindsight, yeah, I just come on in, kids. Like, hey, Mom, like, like it's nothing else. Like you're walking in the house, like whatever, But anyways, I say all that to say, like when my grandma went on hospice, she was, it was like really like just a really unfortunate situation that was like happening. Her body had huge, I didn't even know a body could have something like this, like humongous pressure sores that were like unattended to for months. This just didn't happen overnight. And they I saw parts inside of a body I did not ever want to see. So my relationship with, and then she went on hospice, like, and literally 3 hours later she was gone. So, my relationship with hospice was very, biased. I really thought hospice equaled hell. It equaled death, like the end, that was it. And through my uncle's experience, I realized it is like most things in life. It is what you make of it. There are some very beautiful parts: the support, the caring, the nurturing, the ability to be in your own home. When you're in a hospital, I can just tell you, as a patient, as a supporter of a patient, there is no like peace. There is no like relief. Even in times like my kids have had, my one son, like say he had his own room at the children's hospital, which was very comfortable, right? It's a large room, fits lots of equipment, lots of people. It has its own personal bathroom. It has a sofa that turns into a bed. So your caregiver, supporter, somebody can stay there with you. And they make it as comfortable. There's big TVs, there's mood lighting, there's the ability to order food on demand. You pick your own. It's like a menu, so it's like a room service, kind of like, but there's no rest, right? Like there's like certain times that they come around, but then there's other times they just come when they want to, they got to check on the patient. So there's like, it's like you're constantly like, they're like rest, but then they're also constantly making it so you can't. And it was the same with Brat. It was the same with every single patient I've been in there supporting, whether you're there for a day or whether you're there for a month or more. So the hospital isn't always, and it's hard, right? Like you have loved ones that may want to see you and they have to, come to this like hospital. And a lot of people have like mental blocks with going to a hospital. They have this bias, they have this relationship, they have some type of trauma, perhaps a loved one, a friend, something themselves has happened at a hospital. So not everyone feels comfortable in a sterile, hospital. And some people love it. Some people feel right at home. Some people feel helpful. Like there's a large array of things. So I don't know where you fall into this. And I can say my dad was one of those people that I grew up and he was like, I hate hospitals. I don't like doctors. I'm not going to the doctors. Like, so like our healthcare was not a top priority. Which is why when I had an ulcer and it was ruptured, I was literally walking myself to the doctors. And I know it sounds impossible, but I did. Like that was just the way it was. And, reluctantly he would do things. And then even still, like he was so reluctant, like all of a sudden he would somehow miraculously get a hold of my mom. And next thing you know, my mom's taking me to my nose surgery post-op. And I was like, I don't even know you, lady. Why are you here? Like it was like a very, like no conversation, no anything, just suddenly she was taking me. I'm like, who are you and why? And then as soon as, that was done, she's gone again like the wind. I'm like, that was just weird, whatever. But I say all that to say, like, I was brought up being that this hospital is a scary, bad place. And so I avoided it like the plague, right? And if there's situations that I needed to go to it, I obviously did, like that, where I was like, listen, like this isn't right. What, is going on here? But other than that, it wasn't something we were like proactive with by any means. So then, when my son ended up being in the hospital, I needed to confront that relationship with being in a hospital. I needed to go. Like I said, my whole mission was to be the opposite of all the things that hurt me or I saw hurt somebody else or even hurt themselves of the people before me, right? I have these role models, my aunties, my dad, my mom, my grandparents, and some of their friends. And that was kind of pretty much my influence. And I had some extended family, but most of them were in like Canada and things like that. So we didn't see them very often. But when we did, they seemed so normal and they seemed so loving and so free of a lot of the strife that our family seemed to be like just the victim of. I mean, that is how my aunties referred to it, that, they were cursed and, somebody put a spell on them and all, it's like all this like blame and things. So it was like, they would just complain in perpetuity about whatever happened or about whatever somebody else did to them. And I never really heard a whole lot of accountability. Like, yeah, like I say, like, yeah, if somebody calls me a B and I'm being a B, I have no problem in it. Yeah, maybe I'm going to do some reflecting on maybe I could handle this situation differently, but I'm very aware that I'm being a B. If I'm lying, I'm very aware if I'm lying, and I'm not. So when somebody accuses me of saying something like, oh, you're lying, well, I know I'm not. So now we're sitting here and you're the liar calling me a liar, and like it gets me really flustered and thing because I work really hard at being accountable for who I am, and I work really hard at being honest with myself and others, and that's not an easy thing to do. So to have it almost like evaporated by somebody, ooh, sorry about that, like brrr, earthquake, somebody suggesting as if it was fact that I'm being false, it really infuriates me. But anyways, I say all that to say, I needed to become very comfortable in an uncomfortable place. I found myself in a hospital on December 28th, 1999, and actually on December 27th is when I arrived. I never in a million years would have thought that I was going to birth a baby that day, and I never in a million years would have thought what would transpire for the next, in particular, 4 months was going to happen. Like, that was a highly intense, and nothing that I had ever done in my life had prepared me for the complexity of what was going to happen. And I think that is how it is for many people. But I just didn't have a lot of support system. I really had to learn how to lean on myself. And then it was like the support system that suddenly showed up, like all of a sudden, again, here was my mom. And I was like, it was a very, very confusing and conflicting thing. And just because she was so nice to me in this event, or nice to my son, like, it made me want to forgive everything. Like, I literally only need somebody to be nice to me. I had this dream last night, and it was just like, I woke up this morning and I was like, wow, is this how desperate I have become for kindness? I had a unfortunate interaction with Chris last night, and he ended up screaming at me, and like, he asked me to not move his stuff, and I asked him to please put his stuff away. Then, like, if it's in a community space, you need to put it away, or I'm going to move it. Like, that's it. And just to leave it around, and just make a mess everywhere is not right. And he goes, well, if I come in your room, I'm like, but I'm not putting that in a community space. If I leave something in a community space, then yes, feel entitled to move whatever it is you need to around. And he did not like that answer, because he didn't want his stuff touched. It's just like when I asked him to not scream at me, and he's like, no, I'm not going to not scream at you. I didn't like that answer either, but his choice was to start screaming and start yelling and start, screaming in front of the kids and saying, your mom wants this divorce, and this is her doing, you're just pushing me aside, and all this stuff. And I get that might be how he feels, but that is not how it went down. There were about 55 times that he's like, I'm divorcing you, I don't like you, like all the abusive things, leaving, doing all the things that he's done that have led us to get here. It's not my fault, because he sent me a message saying, we should be separated. And I'm like, yeah, I actually agree. Instead of like usually being like, no, we can work things out, and I'm not sure. Like, I am sure now there is no opportunity for reconciliation at this point. There's no desire for it. And, yesterday is a prime example about how I got to this place in this relationship. And it was an example to me, because at first I wanted to just go back into my default and engage. And I think I was again, I get so bamboozled, because, we had made this progress in text, and he's like, you're, like, you say things so right, and that sounds like, and I was like, I just want this house. Everybody's going through things. I want this house to be a place of peace and safety for everyone who walks in. And, like, he was like, I agree, say it right, da da da. And then he comes and he has all this animosity and toxicity when he sees me, or just being in here, brings up his own stuff, and he doesn't have the emotional maturity or tools to quite handle it all. And I know he's probably working on it personally, but all I know is how it affects me, his screaming and yelling, and how, I can only imagine how it affects the kids. And here we are, So anyways, we all get ourselves into these situations. So I didn't have and I'm not saying anybody else does, but like, I didn't have a support system going into it. I didn't know what to expect. And everything was very scary. Every machine was scary. Every beep was scary. Every wire was scary. Every technical term that they spoke to me as if I knew what they were talking about was scary. Seeing a baby at 3 pounds, 3 ounces, whittled down to 2 pounds, 3 ounces, and, have skin that was so translucent, you can see the veins through it all. Like, it was just a very, humbling experience. And it felt like this nightmare that you just couldn't wake up from. But then there were also beautiful parts, right? Like there was magic in the misery. There were moments that were tender and loving, and I would hold my son and just look into his big, beautiful blue eyes and just know somewhere inside that everything was going to be okay. Like everything around, the beeping, the chaos, the everything behind, like kind of went away. And then all my focus was on this beautiful little boy who was a warrior, who had like just amazing strength that I was like, I was in awe of. I was like, wow, how can you, like, literally, this is your welcome to the world. And, you know, I had a lot of blame because, again, I have a lot of accountability for myself, but I took the blame and it was my fault. I created this life. And so it was somehow was my failure, right? Like, I shouldn't have lifted the desk that Chris was demanding I lift. And I knew it. And I kept telling him, no, I don't want to. But then because I'm a people pleaser, I don't want the strife, I don't want the anger, I lift the desk and I feel a rip. When I felt like something was wrong, I called my doctor and he was very dismissive of it. Instead of me really believing in my gut, I listened to somebody else's. And he had wisdom and he was smarter and this was his job. He knew better, but damn, I knew my body and I should have really advocated. And I don't say this in a way to like beat myself up now, although there were many years of beating myself up. There were many years of beating Chris up. It's now to be in a place that reconfirms to me, listen to myself. Like I know what's right for me and what's wrong for me. I just sometimes don't listen because I get so distracted and muddled by everything else that's going on. So I quickly became very comfortable in the hospital. I asked a ton of questions, and I feel like, you know, when I'm thinking about my son's friend who's in the hospital right now, and I'm thinking about the mother, and I'm thinking about the father, and I'm thinking about the extended family, and I'm thinking about his siblings, I'm thinking about every moment I have been in that situation and all the things that I've learned. Like I have wisdom. I want to tell her, hey, get outside. Here are the places to go. Here's a great sanctuary. This was one of my favorite places to pray. You know, here's this, go for, you know, like all the things that like having put in the reps in a hospital situation has provided me. I want to share because what good does it do just sitting in me? Hopefully I'll never be in a situation where I'm supporting somebody else in a hospital again. But if and when I do, I am ready to go. Like there's no, like that part I got, you know, and I didn't always have it. It was from being through the experience so many times that I recognized when I didn't take care of myself, when I didn't eat, when I felt guilty for not being in the bed, when I didn't get fresh air, I noticed my ability to support them deteriorated. And I'm so proud of this family. They have a very high like religious belief, and they are really leaning in on the bigger powers that may be to support them and their son in this time. And I think that that's great to have something to help ground you and guide you in a really uncertain time, right? So being in the hospital, I had to be curious. I couldn't sit there anymore and fear it, because when I feared it, I sat in my car. Like it wasn't very often that I had to leave. But like I said, he was born in 1999. There were all these millennial babies, and sometimes the maternity ward overfilled. And so when the maternity ward overfilled, I got bumped. And so I would stay as long as I could in the actual NICU room. But I then would start to, you know, because I felt like, you know, with my relationship with my mom, I felt that like presence was, you know, more important. Like you just being present, even if you're not healthy present, and even if you're exhausted present, was more important than not being present. And that was from my own bias, right? That was from my own experience. Like, I don't care if my mom's mentally ill, or I don't care if my mom's not happy, or I don't care. I just want my mom here. You know, this is my story. This is how, you know, I have, you know, spun it. Like, that's what a good mom does. Da, da, da. So for me, it was about quantity over quality. Now, I was really focused on him, so there was a lot of quality time. I mean, but sometimes it was just me staring at him in isolate, sleeping until the next time somebody disturbed him, or until I got the courage to say, I want to hold my son. And I'm glad that like when my niece was born many years later, and she was also a premature baby, I am really glad that the way care is, given has evolved. And I was like in awe of it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so deluxe. And, it was so great to see the advancements in technology, over a 15-20 year span. So I say all that to say, I became very curious. Now, I had limited resources, right? There was books, there's libraries, but I didn't even have time to go to a library, I learned how to really ask a lot of questions and not be fearful and be like, at first when they're talking about stuff, I'm like, gavage, what is gavage feeding? Like, I don't know, but I'm going to sit here and pretend I know what they're saying because I don't want to look dumb or ignorant or anything like that. I don't want to look like I'm a bad mom because I don't know what gavage feeding is. But eventually I got the courage to ask more questions, and I found the nurses I felt comfortable and the doctors I felt comfortable with. So I learned about, okay, so when this thing beeps, should I be worried? Or, when this thing beeps, they allowed me to say, okay, I can silence it. When it's this thing, so to be able to be this extra form of care, even in a medical sense, made me feel like I was now a good mom. It wasn't about sitting there and being there, but I had to become very comfortable, because when I was in fear of this place and in fear of the possibilities of things that can go wrong there, I had to look at it and say, there's so many things that go right though. Like, it's about shifting the mindset. If I want to focus on all the people that are going to come into this hospital and never leave because they pass away, then that's what I'm going to see. But if I'm also going to focus on all the people that come in here broken, sick, wounded, pregnant, and leave with a new baby or stitched up or with medications to make them feel better, then it's a pretty amazing place. And, overcoming that fear, becoming more comfortable, shifting my mind and opening my mind not to see the worst of the possibilities, even though up until that point, that's what hospitals meant to me, but being able to see all the beautiful things that come out of all the people that dedicate their careers and their life's passion to bettering somebody else's life in a medical way. And there just became magic in it. And having the ability to have certain nurses repeat, was like, it became a little family in there. And you would see other families come and go, as my son was the longest at that point patient to ever stay in the NICU, which again, competitive kid. I wouldn't imagine anything different, but I appreciated, that situation because it was close. And I had the ability to stay with him. Had I have went to San Francisco, maybe the care would have been better in some ways, but I also would have been a lot further, and I would not have had the opportunity to stay there. That was abundantly clear from the onset. And so me being with him and navigating with him was really crucial in my bonding with him, because there was postpartum depression. I didn't realize, didn't have a name tag for it, didn't have anything, but there was just so much going on. And, there were days that just felt absolutely debilitating, but I had to get up and I had to keep pumping and I had to keep doing all the things I could to support somebody in a really rocky situation. And I'm so grateful as we approach, he's about to be 25 at the end of the year. And I'm like, damn, I am so grateful that he overcame all of that and that he was able to literally die and come back again and be a part of, because these last 25 years have been magnificent with him. And I appreciate him allowing me the opportunity to become very comfortable in a hospital. And little did I know how instrumental a hospital would become in my own personal life. And there have been times where I was like, I'm going to go become a nurse. I'm going to go become a social worker. I'm going to go become something and go work in this hospital environment since I know it so well. But I'm going to stay my course and I'm going to do this for now, and who knows. But I think it's so interesting because I have, with all my kids, been in experiences where we have been either A, admitted, or B, like in a trial or something that takes us to the hospital all the time, or, have some kind of diagnosis that takes us to the hospital all the time. So I'm very comfortable in a hospital setting now. And it's nothing I ever wanted, but my life experiences and my wisdom and my reps of doing it so much has made me comfortable in there, which has allowed me to be the best caregiver and advocate for somebody else while they're in there. So I say all that to say thank you so much for tuning in today. I am so happy to be a part of your life, and I'm happy you're a part of my life. If you could just do me one big favor, go out there today, give somebody a big smile, give them a compliment, and just watch how they glow up. So thank you. Bye.